Good evening, everyone. Back to the Evermore podcast on the Evermore YouTube channel. We thought we'd take a break from the World Cup, and 2 of 3 of us are very happy with that. That's for damn sure. So we won't talk any more about that competition. But we're back tonight. We thought we'd do a bit of a special, as obviously Newcastle United and the Premier League itself is on a break. We had a little chat in our chat group, and it spiced up this topic, which I'm very interested to get stuck into, and I'm sure you guys are as well. But to join me on that, we've got the stat man Mark, who's been working overtime on this one. He's done a hell of a job, and obviously the Welsh wizard Di, who's back with a big smile on his face. You know, you can't keep a good man down, Di.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. I've beaten out that hangover today, and have still turned up tonight.
He's only just woke up, everybody, in case you realize.
Yeah, exactly. I've missed school completely.
Absolutely. And just before we get stuck in a bit of housekeeping, if you haven't already, please click the like and subscribe button. We'd love you to come and join us. We're on about 2,071 subscribers, so we're really close to 2,100. So if you're new to the channel, if you've tuned in tonight for this topic in particular, which isn't just reserved to Newcastle United, of course, we'll pull it back to because we are a Newcastle podcast, but there's plenty to discuss about football in general here. And we're live as always, so jump in the comments. I think a few of our regulars have already jumped in. We've got Al Stapleton in there, Ash is in the house, Roger is there as well. So let's get stuck right into this topic then. So we're going to talk about this, and just before we get stuck into it, I'm going to have a little bit of a monologue, I suppose. You know, I was thinking about this long and hard, and you know, football is a game that we all love. Football is a traditional game, you know, steeped in heritage and kind of created by working class. You know, people were talking about, you know, miners and shipyard workers and everything else. But like everything else, the game has evolved, the game has changed, and evolution isn't always a good thing. And if I was going to summarize football, I think these days, and we'll get stuck into, you know, exactly why this is probably the case. You're talking about a working class game that's now been hijacked by billionaires and played by millionaires. So the question that we're asking tonight really is, how affordable is football for the fans, the people that make this game what it is, and make it a game worth playing, really. So we're going to get stuck right in. And Mark has been smashing up the stat computer. I'm going to come straight to him first. So the first topic, Mark, when we're talking about the real cost of football and what it means to us as football fans, we're looking at tickets and travel. So kick us off, Mark, and give us some of these horrendous statistics you've pulled out. We're going to start talking about these in a minute.
I mean, yeah. So when you do look at it, some of it does look absolutely horrendous. And because I think quite topically, because we are a Newcastle podcast, the one that really stands out from the first slide is just as an overall cost to the football fan, and Newcastle get hammered. So I'll bring this up. You may need to enlarge your screen a little bit. So this is average spend, tickets and travel. Now, this is including an average rail cost to get you to away games. It doesn't obviously include travel to home games, but to away games, assuming that all the away day tickets cost the same, I think, in this regard, because of the agreement between the league and the clubs to keep the price down. So you sit with an average rail cost for Newcastle fans of £2,206 to get to the 19 away games. Obviously, that's sitting an average of £116.15 per journey. When you add this to the average or the cost of, and this cost for the season ticket is just the lowest available adult price. Now, this doesn't take into account how many of these tickets are available, but it is just the lowest adult price available plus the average cost. So the lowest cost season ticket Newcastle, £417, which is the 4th lowest in the league. So points for that, there are only 3 clubs, as you can see highlighted in green, that are under £400, and they range all the way up to just over £1,000, which is Arsenal's cheapest season ticket. Now, I believe Arsenal's ticket does include cup games. I think it used to. I'm not entirely sure off that straight away for now, but I know if you go back 5 years at least, it included the cup games as well. But yeah, Newcastle sit £82 above Bournemouth as the team that spends the most on average to watch their team at home and travel to all the away games. Now, obviously not everybody will do that, but there are a fair few hardcore fans that will travel home and away. And like I say, that this doesn't include home costs. So travel for those, and obviously the likes of Lee, for example, who we were hoping to have on with it tonight, who makes the trip up the the A19 every home game, it doesn't include costs like that. So that 3,300 could quite easily be another £1,000 on top of that for travel as well.
Right. And Di, what's your first instance, your first thought looking at those kind of numbers there, mate?
To be honest with you, my problem with all of this is more the lack of consideration for a lot of fans. I think is my main frustration. It's unfortunate, in a manner of speaking, that we're Newcastle fans, and if you live in Newcastle, you're going to have to travel to Bournemouth and all these other places. Just by geography, it's going to cost you more money, right? So that's just one of those things that you can't do anything about. If you live in Newcastle and you want to go and watch a game in Brighton, that's a long way to go. It's much quicker if you live in London to do those games, and there's more games you can get to for cheaper. There's some stuff like that you can't help, right? But how many times have we seen games moved late? Fans have booked travel, accommodation, whatever else, and there's very often not a cheap alternative. For example, late trains back from London to Newcastle are few and far between. You're stuck then with a balancing up the options of maybe saving a few quid to go on a bus, but the bus is going to take you, I don't know, 8 hours or so to get to London, maybe more depending on the situation. I think for me, the cost and the ticket travel, with the exception of Arsenal, which is, even if they include cup games, that is mad money. And looking at some of the other ones, Spurs is 800 quid. So that is a huge amount of money. Taking that out of the equation, I actually think it's the inconvenience that comes with these last minute changes, where they know people will be booking in advance to get cheap tickets on the train or whatever, and then one game gets moved by a day or a few hours, and all your plans are screwed. I'm planning on coming over for the Fulham home game. I've booked my flights, booked my accommodation, and the game got moved to the Sunday, and now the game kicks off 3 hours before my flight takes off. So I've got to change my plans. I've got to maybe have another night's accommodation. That's the stuff that I think, in terms of the travel and stuff, which is wrong, and that needs to be addressed. And I don't know what the solution is, because I get that games that seem small at the start of the season may become big by the end of the season, and Sky and whoever else want them on TV. I do understand that, and the clubs are always going to bow to that because there's a huge amount of money involved for them. But there should be a line, really, with how late in the day they can do this. And for me, I think they talk about doing 6 weeks or so, I think it is, before the games. It's just not enough. People book travel and whatever well in advance of that, and I think that's the big thing around travel that needs to change in my mind.
But you're right. I mean, the cost of transport itself is astronomical these days. Certainly in the UK. Obviously, if anyone doesn't know, Di doesn't live in the UK; he lives over in the Netherlands. But it's interesting. Mark's got some very interesting comparisons soon with other European leagues, and when you look at some of the costs of tickets there compared to some of the cost of tickets for, let's be quite frank, Newcastle United, we are enjoying a very lovely purple patch of being a supporter, seeing great football. Winning, results that we'd never expect. We've been served up turgid shite for a long period of time, and they've wanted top dollar for that even before these new owners came in. I mean, the state of English football right now is horrendous. You've got teams going under in leagues below, struggling to pay people's wages, and then you've got these astronomical, sickening fees of money that Premier League clubs are pulling in. And let's be honest, I'm not talking about Manchester United's, Liverpool's, Chelsea's. I'm talking about shit teams like Forest and teams like that are raking in massive amounts of money just for getting relegated, and then and being in the Championship the next season. So the whole model is knackered. I've seen players like Gary Neville, who are owners now, talking about how it's not fair and teams going under and everything else, like Bury and people like that, Wigan and Bolton's and everybody else. But I mean, looking at the fans in general, we all know this. It's a global thing. The cost of living crisis is global, isn't it, Di? It's probably similar in the Netherlands. I'm sure there's people feeling the squeeze there. But Mark, just for our point of view, obviously in the UK, which all them teams are based in, the cost of living crisis is a real thing for people now. People's energy bills are going up 400 quid, 300 quid a month. The mortgages are flying up. Petrol's flying up, as you mentioned there. But Lee getting the games. Lee, we're hoping to have Mountain Eyepiece. Unfortunately, can't come on for the reason. So we wish Mrs. F all the best. Get well soon, Mrs. F. But people like Lee have got to put that money in the car and get up. And it's that love for Newcastle that drags him there. And he's looking at his bank balance, isn't he, Mark, every month? And where's the tipping point here with fans? We're going to get right into this at the end of the episode. But what worries me is, salary wise, doesn't matter where you are in the world, there's a pyramid, isn't there, guys? You know, you got top, middle, and bottom earners, you know, and whatever you do respectively is what you earn as a salary. You know, football is a game that's loved universally by everybody, no matter whether you drive a Jaguar or a fucking rust bucket. You know, you love football, and it's that love that gets you there. You understand when guys buy platinum tickets and all that kind of stuff, and you know they can afford it and they can afford the experience and everything else, and fair enough, right? But when your working class tickets, when the the Gallaghets and the Leesers and stuff become so unaffordable, Mark, what happens to the fan base? What happens to these guys that they keep the club going? You know, the heart of the club.
It's at some point this becomes unaffordable to the normal person, or they begin to start cutting out things that are actually more important. You know, I see in my job an awful lot, and there's an awful lot of people that come through where I work that don't have a lot of money, but they keep that season ticket going because it's been in their family for God knows how long.
It's part of their life, isn't it?
It's part of their life, and it's you know, some of the people that they see, and you hear these stories all the time, that they see these people at the game and they're like family because they see them and they don't really interact with anybody else, but they live for going to the game to see these people again. But they won't give it up, and obviously I completely understand that, but there comes a point where even they're going to get priced out. Now, to be fair to Newcastle have done very well with their season ticket prices over recent years. They haven't gone, and I'll come on to that in a second. But you look at some of the other grounds, some of the other clubs who have been treading water, have been piss poor for God knows how long, are still charging extraordinary amounts. I mean, you've only got to look at that slide and look at the likes of Villa and Wolves, for example. £600+ for their cheapest season ticket. £600
for Villa and Wolves. I mean, come on, what are you watching there for that?
Yeah,
it's just horrendous.
It's unbelievable, and I'll come back to this again. So this is actually a comparison between this season's cheapest ticket and 2017-2018 season ticket. So there are only three there are three season tickets there that have gone down in price. So the cheapest, Newcastle being one of them, Chelsea and Southampton, the other ones who their cheapest ticket has gone massively down in price. Three have stayed the same. Bournemouth, Liverpool, and Manchester United. I was more surprised at the Manchester United being on that list, to be fair. Everybody else has gone up. Now, there's a caveat to some of those clubs because some of those clubs were in the Championship at the time. So Villa, Brentford, Fulham, Leeds, and Forest and Wolves were all in the Championship for that season. So you understand why there's a markup in price, because the value of the ticket then has gone up in terms of the type of football that you're getting. However, £293 for Villa, that's gone up. £206 at Fulham. £291 Wolves gone up. But they're incredible increases in the amount that they've gone up. Arsenal's has gone up by 119 on its own, and they've maintained their Premier League. In fact, during that period, they got significantly worse. So the value of the ticket was a lot less because they've got worse over those years. Yes, I think they've picked up now. Sorry, Dave, go on.
Sorry, mate, I thought you'd finished. Sorry. I do think we have to be a bit careful with some of the stuff when it comes to the ticket prices, you know. Because, well, there's two ways of looking at it from what I can see. You talked about Aston Villa there. I did some quick maths. It's about £32 a ticket if you go to every game, for example, for Villa. I actually don't think that's that bad value for money. I know you can argue about the cost of the value of the quality of the football you're going to see and all that. It becomes a very subjective argument then. If you were going to go to the theatre, if that was your thing, and you wanted to go and watch, you know, Lion King home and away, and you went to the Lion King or whatever Les Mis or whatever shows you like 19 times in a calendar year, I bet you'd spend more than £600 on a ticket. So I on 19 tickets. In fact, I'd bet you'd probably spend more than 1,000, which is what we're talking about for Arsenal. So I do think we need to be a bit careful with this, because I do think, yes, it's cheaper elsewhere. You know, I've got season ticket for ADO Den Haag here. It cost me €140 for my season ticket. I appreciate I am in the cheap seats behind the goal where all the hooligans are, and it's very entertaining. Because we missed a couple of COVID games last year, this season to renew was 114 euros. The flip side of that, right, is that as much as I love going to Ado on a Friday night every other week with my pals, it's shit. Like the level of football is awful. We've just sacked Dirk Kuyt as the manager. Some 600 grand payoff, and we've just re-employed Dick Advocat, whose last job was the Iraq manager.
Dick Advocat, my God.
75. He was appointed the Ado manager this week. And last season, right, and I appreciate I'm only paying 140 euros a season ticket. Well, it works out about 9. There's more teams here, so it's about 9 euros a game. Last season, I couldn't go to 2 games, right? One, because in a really bad storm, the roof blew off one corner of the stadium. It was deemed a health and safety risk, and they didn't allow fans in. So I couldn't go to one game because they couldn't afford to fix the roof. And what they did in the end for the rest of the season is they stopped selling tickets to that corner of the ground and put like a green net above the roof so that the seagulls couldn't fly in, right? Then we went to a game against young PSV, like the youth teams or the under 21s are kind of in our league because Ado aren't in the top league. We got about 15 minutes into the game and the floodlights went off. So they kicked everyone out, went and kind of stood in the concourse or whatever, lights come back on, back out to the match. And another 15 minutes in, they went off and there was a big announcement on the tannoy that went, yeah, sorry lads, you're all going to have to go home. We went to a game at the start of last season and Ado hadn't paid their bar bill basically with their suppliers of beer. So they were selling what turned out to be out of date Heineken, and they had so little of it that about half time they ran out of alcohol in the stadium. There was almost a riot.
Nice.
Like I say all these things because there's a relative trade-off value, right? I'm paying 114 euros this season. It's shit. Part of the stadium's roof has only just been repaired from a year ago. We're selling old gone off Heineken, and every now and again someone forgets to put a tenner in the meter and the floodlights break twice in a game. So I do think you've got to be careful of that. And the reason I say that is because the second side of that is, if you love football, and I know you want to go and watch your football club play, I get it. If you want to go and watch football, you can go and watch football. You can go and watch football for £1 somewhere, I'm sure. Merthyr, which is a Welsh team, are doing kids for £1 this weekend. And now that Wales are out of the World Cup. So if you want to go and watch football in a stadium and have an authentic event, all right, it may not be the Premier League, you can do it. I think the reason I say we have to be careful with some of this stuff, especially around ticket prices, is I think we as football fans have this weird kind of entitlement to certain things. And I like when we're going to come onto the kits and all that, which I'm fully on board with. But how many times have you or I or Mark or whoever, it's January transfer deadline day and there's a deal that's come up and everyone's just like, bloody hell, how much money does he want? Bloody, just pay him, give him the wages, or it's only another couple of million, give him the money. There is a point here where also football fans are also, to an extent, and I'm not blaming football fans for everything here, just with certain things, I'm not saying driving the price up themselves, but these players' wages don't come from nowhere. They have to be paid. And a lot of that is fans' demand. Some of it is owners' arrogance, not really doing things in an effective and efficient way. But I do think, and again, I'm not blaming fans for this. I think it's the nature of being a football fan, right? But I think with some stuff, it's easy to question these things afterwards. But at the time, I think when you're getting a new player in, or you're paying your wages for someone, or you want to keep a good player, that money does have to come from somewhere. So I do think there needs to be a relative level of trade-off in all of these things. If you want top quality football, you've got to pay for it.
Yeah, I do hear that, and I hear your example about your team over in Holland there. But to flip that on its head, Leeds floodlights went off, didn't they, a few months ago? And how much are you paying for a Leeds season ticket?
Yeah.
So there is that argument as well. I mean, Mark's got an interesting comparison talking about European football, and this is the bit that really gets me. And I think this is a UK thing, Di. I really do. I think that the inflated costs of things in the UK, whether it be players, whether it be tickets, whether it be kits, whatever it is, the cost of things over in the UK is grossly inflated than what it is in European football. I mean, I know Mark's got a great slide here, but he's going to look at some of the teams, and I'm talking about European giants here. This is European football, great football, top players playing season after season, good quality, great stadia, all that kind of stuff. And even in some of these deals, you get your transport thrown in, Mark, don't you? Like in the likes of the Bundesliga, where you get you get your train ticket to the game, don't you, as part of that? So that's not an additional cost, but you've got to get a metro to Newcastle even for a home game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, the Metro, they do a cheaper ticket. So I mean, that's not.
But the Metro's shit, mate. The Metro's shit. You better have jumping on a fucking Kellogg's cornflakes box and riding to town. It's an absolute dive of a fucking transport system. Let's be honest.
You're absolutely right, though. So some of those clubs in the Bundesliga do offer tickets to get to the go. I know we looked at it one year, didn't we, about getting tickets to go and watch Dortmund. It was like, well,
and how much cheaper was that to go to Borussia Dortmund and see some of the best players on the planet?
It was ridiculous
compared to seeing who do we have at the time? Dwight Gale, Shite Snail, John Joe Shelby. You know,
it was probably before that, so it was probably equally as bad. But to bring that comparison to kind of light, those are the cheapest tickets available in the Bundesliga from this year. Yeah. Dortmund's the most expensive, and it's still under €250.
That's just
Dortmund.
That's batshit crazy compared to the Premier League.
Where's Dortmund? Dortmund's cheapest is just over 100 or just under 150 or €150. Is for
You're getting ripped off, Ty.
Can I add one thing to this, though? Right,
of course.
I am slightly trying to be devil's advocate here for the sake of the argument. I do think it's also worth referencing with a lot of these clubs. They do offer these tickets, and they are cheap, and it is absolutely real. They offer a comically small portion that are this price.
This is what I said before. So there's no limit to how many there are.
Exactly. There's not one whole stand is this price. And I do think we've got to be careful with this sort of stuff as well. You know, German football is a little bit different, but in the UK, you can get around, and the rules around traveling around for away matches, for example, is pretty relaxed. Here in the Netherlands, if you want to go to an away game, you've got to go on the club sanctioned bus. You can't drive. You can't get a train. If you want to go to an away match in the Netherlands, I think it's similar in Italy as well. You have to turn up at the club stadium however many hours in advance. You get frisked, you get searched, you can't have a drink, you can't do anything. You get plonked on a bus, you get driven, in the case of the Netherlands, to a shithole an hour away from here, while some crazy lads at the front of the bus are playing the worst, happy hardcore dance music you've ever heard in your life. And when you get to the ground, away fans in Europe, as a general rule, aren't allowed any alcohol. Some of the stadiums I've been here, they don't have like a shop. You can't even buy water or anything to eat. So again, I am being devil's advocate a bit here, but I also do think that there's also relative upsides here. And I know, again, there's a cost attached to that. It's the same with anything. If you want to go and do it, it's going to cost you money. But I do think the experience, is very, very unique in the UK. And I think, yes, it might price some people out, and that's obviously bad. And there's a thing that needs to be addressed. I think away ticket should be no more than £10, as far as I'm concerned, for the numbers that go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
But I do think, though, we've also there's other stuff I think that is a bigger problem than all of this in terms of the cost of football. And I think the value of you look at Dortmund, for example. You mentioned there. I appreciate there's other things there, but yes, they've got some of the world's best players. They've got a fantastic stadium. I don't know if you went to Dortmund in the end, but Dortmment is not a nice city. No. It's not a nice place to go. I'm not saying Wolverhampton is either, but it's
I really hope not, because you used the word theatre and Aston Villa in the same sentence, and I wasn't sure that was the right tone there either.
But it's again, the point still stands, though, is that Dortmund have to sell all their best players all the time. Because the finances dictate that, and every now and again they'll have a good run at Europe and whatever. But really, there's only one club who can financially compete there, and that's Munich. In the same way that it's only really Ajax who can compete outside of the national division in terms of Europe. So again, I am being a bit devil's advocate with this stuff here, but I do think the ticket prices, by and large, I think is reflective of the product you get, and I think it's a bit dangerous comparing it to the German league or the Italian league or the Dutch league or whatever, because I do think your away experience and what experience in football is like in these other countries is not quite as classy, as for want of a better word, than is often made out, I think.
But the home experience. I mean, Mark, if you put up that slide again, just the European teams. I think if you go to the La Liga slide, for example, I've been to the new camp, and obviously I think I've been to Madrid as well. not for a match, but I've been stadium tours and things like that. You're talking about the value there for cheapest tickets. Yes, I know there'll be grossly expensive tickets, as you rightly say, Di. These will be in small kind of minority, and then there'll be grossly expensive tickets. But sitting somewhere within the middle will be what you call your average fan. And if you look at the experience you would get going to the new camp or the Bernabeu, the football you'll be in, getting served up, the experience and everything. I've been to Barcelona. I'm sure you guys have probably been to Barcelona as well. It's a beautiful city. There's loads of nice places to drink. Atmosphere is great, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it'll have shady pockets of it, like every club does in the world. Everywhere's got a West End somewhere, haven't they? You know what I mean? But I think the experience of going to these grounds and the value for money that I think you would get for that, compared to somewhere like Leicester or Wolverhampton or something like that, where you're paying more money for that experience. For me, I think isn't right. I really do. And I think that, it's the home fans that I get concerned about. I know the away fans, we've talked about away fans, but your home fans, like someone like Leicester's a good example. Leicester come from down here, went up, didn't they? Then they went back down again. And all of those fans that stuck with them when they went back down again are the ones who get stiffened, when they get up here and they stay up here. And yes, as you rightly say, of course, there's an element of you buying bigger players and you getting a new training ground and you get all that kind of stuff. And, and that has to come with a premium cost. But I don't think the premium needs to be as high as this when you think about the millions they're getting from Sky and from the sponsorship deals and everything else. I really feel like the fans are getting stiff. And Mark, you haven't said much for a while, so just to bring you back in. That's all right, man. Just to bring you back in, Mark, on this. I think Di does make a lot of relevant points here. You're paying for a product, and if you're lucky enough to be able to afford that product and you can afford that experience, you expect a good experience because you're putting in a decent level of money, regardless if it damages or if it hurts you financially more than it would do somebody else or whatever. But the point with this, I think we're trying to make is how much higher will it get, isn't it? Maybe not where it is now. How much higher will it get to, Mark? And is that a real worry that that these prices, if we do it next year, are going to shoot back up again?
Well, I think there's always that risk, isn't it? Especially with the way things are. Obviously, the cost of I guess the cost of running the clubs is going to go through the roof because the cost of utilities and stuff is going to go. You only have to listen to some businesses who are small and how much their outlay is. The outlay on policing, on stewarding, on refurbs of grounds as well will go on. I mean, look at the likes of Man United who've their fans are pretty much saying that the ground's been crumbling and it's had nothing done to it. Now their ticket prices have stayed the same. Can't see that staying because if they're going to have to plough more money into the club to do things up, they're going to have to claw back money from somewhere as well. And I know that the ticket values or the ticket cost accounts for a small proportion of what the clubs really bring in at that level. If you go down the leagues, the ticket sales are a much higher percentage of total revenue.
True.
But in the Premier League, it's much lower because the amount that they get in from sponsorship deals and from the TV rights it dwarfs it massively. But there will come a breaking point. I'm pretty sure of that. And it's just one factor. I mean, you look at. I mean, we're talking about sponsorship and TV rights and stuff. The other side of that, and I haven't gone into that in detail and probably won't today, but look at the amount it costs you to watch sport on TV. In the UK, to watch every Premier League game, you have to have a Sky Sports subscription, Amazon subscription for a couple of months, and BT Sport. That alone is about 70 quid just for those three, and that's per month. And I had a look to add Peacock in the US, which gets you the Premier League football. And actually had a chat with Adam about this a few months ago. It's $5 a month. I mean, the UK fan in terms of football, and I don't know what it's like in the rest of Europe, but I can imagine it's probably less. The TV rights or the TV deals that we get absolutely screwed on. To have to spend an extra 60 odd quid a month to watch the football as opposed to everywhere else in the world that gets to watch it for a fraction of the cost is ridiculous.
I mean, that's a different podcast altogether. I think we could all go on and rant about those guys, couldn't we? Because the level of money they're making off this game is absolutely obscene. So I think that there's valid points there. I think Di makes a really good point about the experience and and the value of that experience. How do you price it? You're never going to keep everybody happy. Just for me, it's a concerning thing. Where dads have got young kids, Mark, and stuff like that. And there'll be a lot of dads out there who have their season tickets, as you say, and want to probably love them more than their kids, to be honest with them. Probably grab not the season ticket, but they're watching the cost of things going up and up and up, and they're wondering when's the breaking point when they're going to give up that season ticket. Do you know what I mean? And it is a worry that you end up losing the fans. But on the subject of some of the other loyalty of football, and this is something I think we're all probably on the same page about, the price of kits at the minute. We've seen some prices kicking around recently. Mark, you and I did a competition, didn't we, where we had to go and buy some product from Castore to give away for our 2K price. And I remember being in the club shop, very pleasant, very friendly people in the club shop. And I remember looking around, and I stopped and I saw a jacket that I don't think I've ever seen Eddie Howe wear in any photograph ever, right? And it was like a kind of ankle length kind of training jacket you'd wear in the blizzard. And I just flicked the tag
an Arsene Wenger code.
An Arsene Wenger style code, yeah, if you will. And I turned the tag over, and it was £95. And I just looked at it and thought, are you taking the piss? I don't even see anybody wear this jacket. And then I flipped it over, and I just felt the material on the front. And the Castore material, we had a conversation. There's talk about the club ditching them and everything, which I'm sure we'll do a podcast on in the future. But it's literally made in China, probably for about 20 pence an hour. And these guys want 95 quid for it. Mark, just pull up your slide first about the shirt sales, and then we'll get kind of you and Di's take on this as well, and see where we sit with this. But yeah, I mean, for me, the actual cost that the clubs are charging for the actual kits and adults and children kits, in particular, if you've got 2 or 3 kids, I don't agree with it either. I think it's really, really overpriced. But your grid probably highlights quite a few interesting facts, Mark. You want to back that up?
So yeah, I mean, this is the price of adult replica shirts. Now, this doesn't include the authentic or elite shirts that are sold that are £100 plus, which again it blows my mind that anybody would pay £120. I think Spurs is £119 for their match worn shirts. That it's absolutely madness. But that's the list of full value kits. So obviously we're currently in the Black Friday sale, so they are cheaper than this at the moment, but this is the general prices. It ranges from £75 for Spurs right the way down to £49 for Brentford. I think the interesting thing with this was just the variance in the makers and how much they charge for each club. So obviously Spurs at £75 with Nike as opposed to Brighton at £55. So there's a £20 difference for the same manufacturer. Now, I get there's going to be a lot more demand for Spurs shirts than there will be for Brighton. Sorry, Brighton fans, but that's just the nature of it. But to be £20 different is madness. Castore with Villa and Newcastle at £65 as opposed to Wolves at £55. There's a £10 difference there, and the kit's exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? It's made exactly the same way, different colours, obviously, but it's ludicrous. And then the number of kits. Now, most teams have 3 now, and I'll come on in a second why. I mean, I do think for a lot of teams that's madness. Fulham are the only one that I could find that are only selling 2, but they have worn a 3rd shirt. Manchester City have 3. You'd expect that for playing in Europe, and the green teams, the green highlights there are the teams that are playing in Europe. But Manchester City also have an esports kit that you can buy for for the kids that they have playing for FIFA for them and stuff. Which that was another one that completely blew my mind. And then Newcastle in the middle there have 5 kits out, or 5 shirts on sale. They have the home kit, the blue away. They've got the white and green 3rd kit. They've got the kit that they wore at Brighton, that weird turquoisey one with the picture, with the skyline on. And then I think was it an anniversary kit, which was that black and greyish one. It looks absolutely awful. That's on sale as well. So Newcastle currently have 5 different shirts on sale. They're not playing in Europe. And I'll come on in a second. I'll skip a slide to go to the home and away kits. There's only, when you look at the combination of kits, when Newcastle play away from home, they can wear a combination of the home and away kit. The only one that they fall foul of it is going to Brighton, really, where the colouring of Brighton's kit means that either of those would be a clash, and that they utilise the third kit. Only the third kit's white, so they can't wear that one. So they had to bring in a fourth one, which is ridiculous. I get in terms of when you play in the league, most teams would only need two, but if you're playing in Europe or playing in the cup competitions, you potentially need a third kit. I sort of understand that for playing in that regard, but it's just the number of kits that are being produced. And then in terms of, and I've gone too far, sorry, and then this is the child prices as well. The price of a child kit or a youth kit for Spurs, £60. And there's that difference between the top and the bottom. And it's astronomical.
So-
like you touched on, when there's 2 or 3 kids involved, the whole value is just, it's through the roof, and it's crackers, absolutely crackers.
You're talking, Di, just to bring you in here with these 5 kits. I know you nearly fell off your chair when Mark pulled this up before we went on, but if you're talking, you've got a couple of kids and an adult, you're looking at the thick end of £200 for 3 shirts, aren't you, mate? I mean, what's your take on that kind of a thing there? I know obviously the ticket one, you made your point clear on that. I think, and I think you had made some really good points on that one. But with the shirt one, I think we're maybe a bit more aligned. I think in kind of a thinking with this. But
yeah,
mate,
I
mean, that's too much, isn't it, mate? It's got to be.
It's absurd, and I think it's that's an example of when we're talking about value for money before, where we're sheer profiteering. I can't speak for all of them because I've obviously don't own any of the other kits, but the quality of the shirts are awful. I've not bought anything since Mike Ashley took over. I've not bought anything from Newcastle United since Ashley, and with the Saudis, I don't really want to give them my money, so I'm not buying anything from the club in any case. But I will say that if you wanted to buy that home and away shirt and all the 5 kits, all that other stuff, just for me, I'm talking, you're not far away from £400 there. I mean, that is an absolute scandal when you consider that in 6 months from now or whatever, when the new season starts, all of those 5 kits are in the bin, and we're getting new one every year. That's the one that bothers me about this, is that it's on a cycle, and there'll be another 4 or 5 whatever next season, and people pay it. It's mad, and I think it's important to realize that there are alternatives. Like I wanted to say, I'm not sure how legal all of these things are, but DHgate, if you want to get your kids a kit for Christmas, DHgate.
Yeah, there's quite, I've seen that quite a bit. Yeah.
A mate of mine has got a couple of Wales shirts from there, and they are identical. They've got even the lettering on the inside of the Adidas tag, you would not know. And it was, I think he paid for his Wales shirt that I paid £60 for. I think he paid £7. You can't really argue with that, can you? They've got retro kits and they've got old kits. The other thing is looking at sites like classicshirts.com that buy in bulk leftover shirts from clubs and national teams as well. And if you can go on there and you can get previous season shirts for a third of the price, I appreciate everyone wants the newest kit at the best time, but there are definite ways around it, and I think that's really important. But I in turn with that, I think it also highlights just how astronomical the cost is that within, you can get a replica from China for £7, or you can get the exact same, authentic shirt 6 months later when no one's getting them anymore, and for a third of the price. So, there are real alternatives, but it really does highlight just how expensive and how much of a piss take it is, to be honest.
Absolutely. And as Ash says there, Mark, as we talked about the quality of the jacket and the strip and everything, the cheaper kits by manufacturers are template kits. You can see the variations throughout the world. The expensive ones are bespoke designs. We'll go back. We talked a little bit about the Grandad collar one, didn't we? The 3 of us, and how it kind of holds a special place in your heart. You look at how well that kit was made. That was years ago. You're looking at, it was good material, nice embossed kind of stitch badge, and the sponsors and everything. I've got an old Keegan style jumper, and it's a bit weather worn, but it's still quality. You look at these Castore things. I mean, the moths will be eating the arse out of that in about 7 months, won't they? Because it's just not built to last.
Yeah.
How many times do we see football fans get the kit and within weeks stuff's peeling off the sponsorship, the badges are coming off, the quality doesn't match the price that we're paying. It really doesn't. And I did a bit of a cost comparison to 1992, and the sort of kits around 1992 were about 30 quid. So if you factor in inflation, kits would cost about 60 quid. And that would be, I guess, reasonable. And I say that through gritted teeth. But the quality of the kits back in 1992 was far greater than the quality of the kits now. And I know they're looking at all the different technologies that kits are made with, but that's into the authentic kits, the elite kits that they sell that are an astronomical price. As Ash said there, that most of the kits are a template. They are made in exactly the same way. They're made on the cheap, in bulk, and they're sold at astronomical prices. We've had the argument about the clubs getting lots and lots of money in kit revenue. In reality, they get very little. I think Manchester United's deal for their kit, they only get about 7%, and that works really kind of across the board. One of the bits I found was about the German national shirt back, I think it was 2014. And those shirts were sold for around about 90 euros at the time. Now, this is going back away and they were expensive, but these were the higher level ones. In the end, Adidas, who made the kit, only got about 17% of that kit back to them. 6% went to the federation. The greatest markup on it was down to the retailers. Now, when you factor, for Newcastle's kit, the retailer at the ground, the retailer for most of the kits in terms of sold in the club stores and stuff, it's by Castore. Yeah. So most of the stuff is going back to them anyway. So they're getting their 17% or whatever it is, plus an extra 44% back. They're making absolute killing. And the distribution costs aren't that much. In terms of that shirt that I looked at before, if that £90 shirt, the distribution costs distribution, production and marketing costs account for about 15 euros out of 90. The rest is all on sort of taxes and markup.
It's scary stuff. Dan, you wanted to make a point on Ash's comment before there, mate, didn't you? About the template, I think. On
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the template. Obviously, we've just, I say just enjoyed the World Cup. It's not over because Wales are out. But I think, well, it basically is. But we were told that we kind of weren't part of Adidas's elite level kit program. I don't know what they call it when they sell it out. And like Belgium had like a warm-up top, a training top, a presentation jacket, all of this stuff, and we just had our home and away shirts and one warm-up top.
This is Wales. Yeah, this is Wales.
This is Wales. Yeah. Which is fine. I don't need any more Wales crap that I have in my life already. But if you're not part of that kind of elite program or however they word it, everything that's kind of extra, the add-on stuff, is exorbitant. So we had these presentation jackets, like red zip-up, like quite thick jackets with the Adidas stripes on it. So the Wales badge on the back, on the front, sorry, and on the back it says Cymru. When I saw the players walk out in the ground with that, I was just like, I have got to get me one of them. They are lovely. Yeah. And because we are not part of their elite program or whatever it's called, that presentation jacket, which is effectively like a thick tracksuit top with Cymru written on the back, was 95 quid. And it's not like a thick winter coat or anything like that. It's effectively a thick tracksuit top. And you could get the same one that the Belgians wear, and that was 70 quid. And that's still ridiculously expensive. But because they're part of these elite level programs and they're bespoke, as Ash mentioned earlier, you pay an extra 25 quid for them just because you're from a different country. They're the same bloody jacket. So it's not just the profiteering of it; it's the piss take almost of instead of having a red one with Belgium on the front, I've got a red one with Cymru on the back, and they've chucked me an extra 25 quid for it, the bastards.
Ridiculous.
It is absolutely outrageous.
Maybe Gareth Bale cost them a few quid in an acca one time or something. They're just trying to take it out on Wales, possibly. Maybe.
Exactly.
But Roger can't believe 95 quid. But Ash is making a good point here in a funny way, as he always does. Distribution costs for Castoria now because they never send the bastards out. That's something else to consider as well. You're talking about customer experience here as well. You're paying 90 odd quid for a piece of material that they are assigned to make for the club, your beloved club, your Newcastle United, the club you've always had a shirt for, that you buy your kids a shirt for, you buy your dad a shirt on his birthday for, whatever it is. And these guys are ripping your eyes out of your head, making gross obscene profit. And they're not even giving you good customer service, Mark. I mean, that is something, as Di rightly said about the tickets, you're getting the customer service, you're getting the experience, you're in the ground, it's a good experience, the lager's good or whatever, the seats are good, everything about the ground and the experience is good. And you think, you know what, it's expensive, but it's worth it. This is not worth it, Mark, is it? The way they're treating the fans is grotesque, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to take Castoria is the number of stories now that you hear of people ordering kits and then waiting weeks or months for them to be delivered.
We should do a podcast on that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just, like I say, it comes down to, are you getting the quality for the amount of money that you're paying for them? And you're just not. Now you're really not. I could understand it, like I said, if the quality was the same as it was 30 years ago. We've got 30 years further down the line, and the quality and the products that we're being given is just far worse. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not. It's not good enough, mate. It is. I don't know when it's going to end. I really don't. I mean, there's talk about the club booting Castoria out, and I think if anything else, it's probably all these Jackanory Castori stories. I think coming out of the wash and everyone saying the shite, the this, the that. Because what will happen is Di is completely right. People will run the likes of DHgate and they'll be buying product from there. So when you look at St James's Park and the camera pans around, to the naked eye at first glance, it look like a shirt, but then somebody will go, "Oh, it's not a shirt. I haven't got the badge," and then all of a sudden the club will be thinking, "We're not getting the proper shirt getting out there. It's all replicas because the kit provider is horrendous." And it makes me wonder about the old infamous Saudi shirt, which I know we haven't spent too much time on. We'll throw a hand grenade in on that one, but it makes you wonder if that was actually Castori's idea and the club weren't behind that, and that could be another reason that they're getting booted out. But yeah, there's loads of things to look at. But as we love a lager and a pie, those guys, we thought we'd look at the pie and the pint, which again is traditionally part of the experience in football as well, isn't it, Mark? You had some inflation costs in that. I mean, before we get into that, probably similar to what Di is saying about the tickets, there has to come some kind of an understanding that inflation in food is being whacked up massively over the years, isn't it? The kind of stuff you see, I don't know if you follow these guys on Twitter. I follow them. They're football fan snacks or something like that, and they show you these like lonely burgers with no cheese, and it's like sad looking bun, and they go like 9 quid at like I don't know, Wrexham or something like that, and you go, what the fuck, 9 quid? So there is a bit of a sense of you got to accept the inflation. But I mean, some of the cost, Mark, on your grid there, you'd be surprised at, wouldn't you, in terms of the pie and the pint and the increases.
I noticed you picking on Wales there. You had to pick a Welsh team when you were picking out your sad little burger. Pathetic. Just
because I'm jealous of Ryan Reynolds. That's what it really is. That nothing to do with Wales, mate. It's that bloody Ryan Reynolds, handsome bastard. Sorry, Mark, you're going to pull up.
I was going to say, when we look at the pie, the one thing that struck me straight away from this whole thing was the cheapest pint in the Premier League is at Man U. Which really surprised me. I don't know why it surprised me so much, but it really surprised. I think Liverpool's was the next cheapest at £3.30. It's just, there's some extraordinary prices. I mean, West Ham, the cheapest pint at West Ham is £7.30. £7.30 for a pint.
London cost is always bad for a pint.
You say that, but Spurs is £5.19. Chelsea's £5.70. Arsenal's is £6.35. Fulham's is £5.80. Brentford's is £5.25, and they're just down the road. Where the hell they get £7.30? Now, I think with them that it's not West Ham; it's an external operator that runs
contract
the
caterer or something like that. Yeah.
But they're because of the stadium. But still, £7.30 is just a ridiculous amount of money for a beer. And the variance in pies as well. I know that the quality across the league is obviously a little bit wayward, as is the cost of them, but that ranges all the way up to about £6 as well. And again, The highest one in that list is West Ham. But interestingly, that the one thing, a lot of those prices in the last year have gone up. If we go back to the pint, for example, there was only one club that had actually lowered their cost of a pint in the last year, or between the last 2 seasons, and that was Newcastle, which had gone down 10 pence. So not a great amount, but it's still gone in the right direction. But still,
the football's gone up and the pints have gone down. What a world we're living in, mate. With Newcastle,
that's a hell of a combination, isn't it?
Living the dream.
Is it not? But I suppose, Manchester United fans now, they're probably too busy drinking glasses of Merlot, probably aren't they? That's probably why their pints are so cheap, mate.
Merlot and
they're prawn sandwiches. Prawn sandwiches.
Sure, it's funny you mentioned that about Man United. I went to a Man United a few years ago when we beat them when Kabay scored, and I had a ticket with it in the home end with my my brother-in-law. And they did a deal. I don't know if they still do it, but you could have a pint of Singer, which is their official beer, which is not bad, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like an extra large version of a Mars bar or a Twix or a Snickers or whatever, those big versions they do, and a pie for £10. And I thought that was actually pretty good. Yeah,
I think that's all right. That
pretty good value for the day out. The thing that worries me with all of this. Is I read a brilliant book about the cost of football, and talking about how the Premier League has kind of evolved and why things changed. Like, I didn't know, I'm sure you guys knew this, but I didn't realize that halftime was 10 minutes and they made it 15 minutes just purely to allow people to go and buy more stuff at halftime. I didn't realize that. And I think my big worry here is we're going down an American market road. Definitely. They just don't care. And I've lived in America. I love it there. But when we go and watch used to go and watch the Red Sox play, if you wanted to buy a beer, the big cans that the big pint cans basically they do in America, the big pint cans are like Bud Light, so like piss basically was $12 a can.
Jesus. Wow.
$12.
How long ago was that? Then?
I've moved here 2.5 years ago, so yeah, but let's say 3 years ago for the sake of argument. And I can't imagine that's gone down. I went to watch Washington. I love my NFL, so I went to watch Washington play a couple of times. We talk about ticket prices. I admit we had good tickets. We were second tier, basically on the halfway line. I paid $350 for one ticket for one game I went to. And beer and food there again, you're talking like $14 for a beer. And the problem is that people want to go and you can have a beer in your seat, so people pay it. And it's part of the experience and all of that stuff. And I'm really worried, West Ham being the worst one there, I'm really worried about how the price of that stuff is going, because you're a completely captive market. I appreciate you can't take your beer to your seat and whatever, but I think it's incumbent on football clubs to be doing the right things for the community and the people around it. They should be charging £2.50 a pint in the 2 hours, 3 hours before the match, getting people into that ground early, getting them spending their money in the ground, supporting the club. And okay, it might impact local businesses, but a little bit before the match, but everyone will go out for a beer after. Get everyone in the ground, get the atmosphere jumping in the stadium, stop playing shit music, stop playing £7.50 for a pint, get people in for £2.50 a go. People would be falling over themselves to get in the ground early. That's what we do here. There's a little hut outside the ground, Addo, and it is like someone's, a large wooden tent, large wooden hut, sorry. And it is absolutely, it's as cheap as cheap. I think it's €3 for a pint of Heineken. They got little cans of all sorts of other stuff. We go there hours before the game. Even the pissing down rain, people are stood out there smashing away their free beers, the cheap beers, sorry. It's brilliant. You get a lot of atmosphere. Everyone's a laugh. You're kind of in one place with the other fans together. It's great fun. I do not know why. It is, like I said before, with the shirts, it's just profiteering. Man United, fair play to them, £3 a pint. That's great. But if I'm telling you now, if you charge £2.50 a pint, £2 a pint, people be falling over themselves to get into that ground. They'd sell just as much. They'd make just as much money, and there's a tangible benefit in terms of what they get out of it.
They buy two at a time. You say $2.50 a pint, you buy two at a time, and the serves of five. It's probably a good way to wrap it up, kind of with the last topic, really. Taking all this into account, the summaries and stuff like that. Will football be affordable in the future? Mark, just kind of coming to you with your take on this. I think Di's hit the nail on the head there. To be honest with you, the more Americanism that's happening to this sport. I see it as well, and it worries me. I'm not a big fan of the American model. I think as Di rightly says, I mean, America is quite like that as a society. You know, we're very lucky in terms of our medical benefits and stuff that we have in the UK. In America, if you can't afford it, you're fucked. And it's the same with the sport as well. If you can't afford it, you're fucked. And do you fear that football is going that way here in this country, that, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, if you can't afford it, you're fucked? You know, you won't be able to watch a game, and there'll only be a certain type of people in the ground, and it might even dull the atmosphere, Mark. It might take away what makes Newcastle United and St James's Park as magical as it is.
I hope not. But I was going to use the same point as Di did, so thanks for stealing my point there, Di. If you look at the American,
he is a wizard,
market,
Mark. Come on, he is a wizard.
Exactly.
You know he can do that. He's got that magic wand.
If you look at that market, it's a nightmare. I mean, I've not been, but when we've looked at going, the first thing I look at is, can I go and see the Ravens play? And the ticket prices, even for, you know, the cheap seats, is expensive. It's expensive in the ground for everything. One of the guys I work with went to watch the Brooklyn Nets a couple of years ago, and he said he spent good couple of $100 inside the arena on drinks and food for him and his family. It's just ridiculous. But yes, I think we're slowly heading that way, because the more and more commercial we get in football, that's the way. And people will continue to, unfortunately, people will continue to pay it because they want to be there. They want to go. They'll lose out, I think, in terms of the halftime sort of pie and pint thing. I don't buy anything when I'm in the ground generally now.
No,
because
I'll have a pint. I'll have a pint, or I've worked with the boys. We'll do rounds or something. You know, that's kind of what we do. You know?
And I agree with Di in that regard. I'll go for a couple of beers before the game. Now, if I can go to the ground and have a couple of beers, you know, in my, you know, couple of plastic glasses sitting in my seat, have a beer. I'm going to go and do that, because I'll sample the atmosphere of the ground for a lot longer than the 10 minutes that I've got into the ground before the game kicks off. I just think that would add a huge amount to it.
Following Qatar, they're trying to stop that anyway. They're trying to stop more beer in the ground, aren't they? Anyway, which again, it's the minority ruining it for the majority who, like you boys and me, we'd sit with a beer, sitting in our seats, drinking in the atmosphere, waiting, getting pumped for the game, talking about formations and all that kind of stuff. But it's all the idiots going, causing trouble that are ruining it, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. The argument, I guess, that you touched on Qatar and stuff, and a lot have looked at, is just how little bother there's been in Qatar in terms of. That's
because they're scared they're going to get buried in the desert if they cause any bother, mate. That's probably more than anything.
Do you know what? Honestly, when I was out there, I think that one thing I think would change a lot of the drunken behavior. We're off topic now, but that would change a lot of that behavior. Is a real crackdown on it, because believe you me, there are a lot of very drunk people there, us included. Oh, yeah. You know,
but they were respectful drunk, I think.
Exactly. And I tell you what, when there's a real threat of going somewhere, or someone kicking the shit out of you, or, you know, whatever else the threats are out there, I'll tell you now, it doesn't half sober you up quickly when you step outside and see a few of the Rozzers there with their, you know, with their guns and whatever else. That sobers you up sharpish. Even in offices, I'm absolutely fine, lads. I'm just offering early.
I'll just put that down. And water, please. Tonic water, please. That'll do me. But Di, just you mentioned there obviously about the American sports. I think Roger shares your concern about, you know, the Americanisms and the cost and everything. Just kind of the summary, you know, going forward. You know, obviously, as a fan who's abroad, a Newcastle fan who's abroad, you like to fly back and sample, you know, a game or two if you can and stuff like that as well. You know, you probably seen the inflated costs and everything, flights and, you know, and getting back and hotels and everything that goes with the package of international fans. We've looked at domestic fans and people traveling, you know, from Newcastle to Leeds or whatever it may be. Fans like yourself, you know, you want to be a global force as a club, which Newcastle, I think Newcastle were, and we can get back to there as well. And we've got a lot of fans all over the world, even on our podcast. Adam's in America, you're in, you know, in the Netherlands. You know, do you feel that those fans will get pushed out with these inflated costs as well, and it'll be difficult for you to come and do that?
Yes and no. I think it's one of those things. If you know, I've made the choice to go and live where I live. I've got to accept that there's a downside.
The conditions. Yeah.
You know, it is what it is, and I'm fortunate. I've got I've got a decent enough job here. I've got enough money to, football is my obsession. I've got enough money to go on football trips. That's what I spend my disposable income on, is going, traveling around watching Wales and Newcastle. So I'm fortunate in that regard. And I don't think that stuff would ever get to the point where it would make a difference to me, where I'd be able to stop going. I think the problem is, and you mentioned it in your first question to Mark there, is where your traditional fan base is getting pushed out. And that's what I worry. I think there's a portion of people who'll always be able to find a way to afford it. And it's the cheapest option, and they won't have a beer at the match. They just want to go and all that.
They'll drive to the game and drive back or whatever it is, and stuff like that. Yeah.
So there are people who will always do that. And we were talking about kits from 30 years ago, 20 years ago. How different are the atmospheres? I was watching old videos and stuff, like some fantastic videos on Twitter of people going absolutely bonkers when they've scored a goal, and limbs everywhere. Those things have changed. They've gone, and part of that's because of stadiums, and of course, but your average man on the street can't afford to spend 90 quid on a one-off football ticket. You just can't do it. By the time you're taking your kids there and you've had a beer, you can easily spend 500 quid on a day out, and that's before you've eaten afterwards or whatever. And that's not an exaggeration. If you go with your missus and kids, you can easily spend 500 quid. And I think what the real problem is, I worry about, is that it's becoming a tourist spot. Like you mentioned Barcelona before. I went to watch Barca play. It was fantastic. I loved it. There was no atmosphere at all. And it's because there were a load of blokes like me there who were having a weekend on the piss in Barcelona, and you don't know the chants, you don't know the songs, you know the words, you're having a lovely time, but there's no atmosphere. Man City, I've got a real soft spot for Man City. My uncle's a City fan, and I went to one of my first games at Main Road. I've got a big soft spot for them, and their fan base is fantastic. And the old Main Road, the atmosphere was amazing. All of a sudden now, I went to watch them last season when I was back with my uncle, and there's just no atmosphere. No
library, they call it. Empty had.
It's because, and it's not empty. Pretty much every seat is full, but it's full of people who've come to take a photo of their favorite player from all four corners of the globe. And I get that. That's fantastic. But the cost of that is there's no atmosphere. And I think that is because the rising cost of tickets means that people can't afford to go every week. And it's people who can come in on high days and holidays and spend 75 quid or whatever for one ticket. And that's the way a lot of it is going. That's my big concern, is that it ends up costing a lot of atmosphere because the wrong type of fan is being priced out, or the right type of fan is being. The people we want to turn up can't afford to turn up anymore.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose just closing, give my thoughts on it. I think that one of the big issues is probably the fans of tomorrow, isn't it, guys? It's okay to talk about the fans of now. There's a whole massive debate about what it's going to be like for the fans of tomorrow to afford to go to a game, given the cost of tickets, and what employment opportunities will be available for them and everything else to be able to do that. And it is a big concern what the future of the game may look like. Maybe I'm being pessimistic. I've got some weird Hunger Games analogy in my head where only these really, really affluent people can go watch the game. They go, jolly good game by Bruno there today. And then you end up with all the other people living in shit, just trying to peer through the fence and watch it on somebody's TV, possibly. But maybe I'm wrong, but I think Ash has just said in the comments there as well, as we said at the start, it's a sport run by billionaires, played by millionaires, and they're out of touch with the cost of living and don't see how bad things are. Roger's saying there, what an analogy, nightclubbing, people go with their phones out and dance, don't dance away, man. No, you're right. You see that as well, guys, as you've just touched on, mate. People get the phones out instead of just living in the moment. I was at the City game when we drew with them, and when Wilson scored, I was with PK, and I went nuts. I just jumped, and it was such a great goal, and the atmosphere and everything. And I remember looking around, and there was kids on their phones. Yeah. And there was kids just turning around swearing at the away fans, which I thought was weird. Like, I was more focused on the game. But so the support of themselves, you're right, that has changed as well. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose we have to consider that as well. But yeah, so now it's a very interesting topic, guys. It's been good to talk to you about it tonight. Mark, do you have any final thoughts, mate? Jerry Springer, do you have any final thoughts for me?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail there. The phone thing infuriates us at times because they make the big thing of these pictures online when they say, "Look, there's no phones." There shouldn't be. Take the moment in. You can go and watch the game again later on.
Was it that Leeds kid who was doing that to Ronaldo or something? That was beautiful. That was like poetry in motion.
This is it. We've lost that as a society now at football games. Gone are the days where you just give a wanker sign at the player who's just scored against you. You stick the V's up them. Now it's I need a videotape. Videotape you. How old am I? I need to record you what you're doing. Jesus Christ! Sitting there with all... But do you know what I mean? It's that image now of every time you see a goal scored against, but you're recording the opposition scoring against you. What the fuck is wrong with you? Support your team, give them shit. That's what you're there for. That drives me crazy. But you're right. It's the kind of sold football to the wrong supporters now, so that a lot of the people that are coming in are tourists. You look at Manchester United as the prime example. It's geared towards the tourist market. It's not geared towards the true fans.
You're right. Well, Keane famously said it with the prawn sandwiches. Great comment for Ash to close us off there. So because Ronaldo will come over and smash your foot off the floor otherwise. It's absolutely brilliant. So it's been a great pod, guys. I think Roger said that. Thank you very much, Roger. Been a great episode, guys, as always. Really enjoyed it. And just wrapping up there. If you're new to the channel, you've just checked it out the first time, make sure you like and subscribe. I'd love you to come and join us. We're on 2071. Love you to get us to 2,100. Just on a nice, handsome face there. We're just lifting up to show you. And we'll be back, I'm sure, with some more podcasts through this World Cup as well. Been a bit different for us all on the podcast, lads, over the World Cup, but we're doing the best to bring you as much content as humanly possible. So for me and the lads, it's cheerio. Let's keep supporting that team of McCoy United. Afford it as best as you can. And then we'll be back soon with another podcast. See you later, guys.
Take care, guys.
All right.